ever get this, like, urge, this kind of deep down pull to just, I don't know, scrap everything and start fresh? You know, new place, new you.
Well, that's what we're diving into today, this idea of a fresh start. We're looking at Abram, the whole father of nations thing.
Right, from Genesis.
Exactly, Genesis.
Yeah.
The beginning, we're going back to that wellspring, looking at it with fresh eyes,
Always a good idea.
So Abram, he's living in Haran, right? When out of nowhere, bam, he gets this life-altering message. And I'm not talking about some subtle hint from the universe here. This is a direct call from God.
Yeah, no kidding. God lays it all out. Leave your country, your people, even your father's house. It's a clean break.
And then what? Go to this new land.
That I will show you, God says. Talk about a leap of faith.
Huge ask, right? Huge. And it's more than just go here, do that. God's setting up this covenant, this rock-solid promise.
With some serious weight behind it, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. This impacts not just Abram, but generations to come. I mean, we're still talking about it now.
Okay, so what's the promise?
A great nation. That's what God promises. Your name. Everyone will know it. Blessings galore. And get this, you'll be a source of blessing for others.
Whoa. So he's going to be blessed and be a blessing. Powerful stuff.
Exactly.
So Abram, he's 75 at this point. What does he do?
Packs up, no hesitation.
Seriously?
Yep. Gets Sarai, his wife.
Of course, got to bring the wife.
His nephew Lot.
Okay, the whole crew.
Gathers his stuff. I mean, the guy was loaded.
Ugh.
And they hit the road. This wasn't a weekend getaway. This was the move.
From Haran all the way to Canaan.
Canaan, yeah. This land he's promised but has never actually seen. The ultimate trust fall.
That's wild. And along the way, there are these stops they make. Shechem, Bethel, These names ring a bell, don't they?
Oh, yeah. These aren't just any random pit stops, these places.
Yeah.
They're kind of a big deal in biblical history.
Like they pop up again?
Oh, yeah. Shechem, major cultural and religious hub back in the day.
Okay.
Bethel means house of God, literally.
Whoa. And
That one plays a big part later on in the story of the Israelites.
So it's almost like foreshadowing.
Could be.
Intriguing. But here's another thing. During these travels, Abram does something kind of interesting. He builds altars. And not just one, he builds several along the way.
That's something to think about, right?
Yeah, what's that all about? I mean, this guy's in the middle of this huge transition, and he's stopping to, pray?
I think it says a lot about him. This wasn't just some formality, building an altar back then. Huge deal. It was recognizing God's presence in a specific place.
Like a physical marker.
Exactly. It's a place of offering, of saying thank you, of seeking guidance.
Wow. So even with all the chaos of this move, he keeps that connection strong.
Seems like it. It shows you faith. It's not some passive thing. It's active. You got to live it out. Choices, actions, the whole 9 yards.
And Abram, he's not just receiving this promise.
He's owning it.
He's living it out every step of the way. So Abram's living the dream. New land, altars, the whole 9 yards. But life, it's at other plans.
Yeah, life tends to do that. And the land, Canaan, it wasn't all sunshine and roses,
Yeah.
Drought was a real threat. And guess what?
Oh, don't tell me.
A famine hits.
Yeah.
And not just any famine, a bad one.
Tough break. So what does Abram do? He's got to survive.
He does. And this is where it gets interesting. Abram makes the decision, you see. He decides to leave.
Leave the promised land.
The promised land. He heads for Egypt, looking for food, for safety.
I can't imagine being that desperate to leave behind everything you thought was secure.
Right. It shows the complexity of human nature. I mean, you'd think Abram, this guy chosen by God, he'd stand strong, right? Trust in the promise.
Yeah, you'd think.
But he's human, just like us. And fear. Fear makes you do things.
To choose a survival. Understandable, but...
It takes him down a slippery slope. See, in Egypt, things get complicated.
Complicated how?
Well, we've got to remember, we're looking back at this story through a modern lens, right? Thousands of years later.
Yeah.
The cultural context, it was different.
Totally different world.
Right. So Abram, he's afraid, really afraid. And he asks Sarai to do something. Well, let's just say it puts her in a tough spot.
I'm guessing this is about Sarai's beauty being kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Word got around. And Abram, he knew it could cause problems.
So what does he do?
He asks Sarai to lie.
Lie? About what?
Her identity. He tells her, say you're my sister.
Not his wife.
Exactly. He's scared that if people know she's his wife, they'll kill him to get to her.
Wow. Putting his life above hers.
It's a difficult passage to wrestle with, no doubt. Seeing how women were viewed, the dangers they faced. And Abram, he lets fear dictate his actions.
And what's crazy is it kind of works for a while anyway.
Right. It's like this weird twist of fate.
So they get to Egypt, and just like Abram figured, Sarai, she catches the eye of Pharaoh's officials.
Can't really blame the guys, can you?
And before you know it, Sarai's in front of Pharaoh himself.
Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, right place, if you're Pharaoh, I guess.
True. We don't get every little detail, but the text makes it pretty clear Pharaoh, he's smitten.
And since he thinks Sarai is Abram's sister,
He piles gifts on Abram. Livestock, servants, the whole shebang. It's like Abram won the lottery by lying.
talk about irony.
It's almost like, it looks like he got away with it, right?
Almost. But those altars Abram built, remember those?
Someone was paying attention.
Because suddenly, things in Egypt, well, they take a turn. A bad one.
Yeah, you could say that.
So Egypt's in chaos. Plagues are dropping left and right. And you gotta wonder.
Yeah, you don't just get a bunch of plagues out of nowhere.
Exactly. There's got to be a connection, right?
The text gets a little vague here. Doesn't spell it all out for you. But the message, crystal clear. Someone up there, they were not happy.
Especially since, Abram's whole deal with God, this covenant, it wasn't just a suggestion.
Oh, no. This was a binding promise.
Yeah.
With some serious weight behind it.
And breaking that promise, turns out there were going to be consequences.
Abram, I thought he was slick, getting away with it. But someone was keeping score.
And that someone had a direct line to Pharaoh.
Oh, yeah. Plagues, those get your attention.
They sure will. So Pharaoh, he starts putting two and two together, and he realizes Sarai's not just some random beauty.
She's connected to all this chaos.
And the one who brought her there, Abram.
Who, might I add, is supposed to be a man of God.
Right. The irony isn't lost on me.
So Pharaoh, he's had enough. He calls Abram out.
And let me tell you, this is not a friendly chat. Pharaoh lays it down. You lied to me. This isn't your sister. This is your wife. He's furious.
And can you blame him? I mean, talk about a betrayal.
And what's interesting, Pharaoh, the guy with all the power, right? He's the one who comes across as, well, kind of righteous.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that, would you? It's Pharaoh who points to the finger and says, hey, what you did, not cool.
You put my whole kingdom at risk.
And let's be real, Pharaoh could have taken Sarai, no questions asked. That was kind of the norm back then.
But he didn't. He sent them packing.
Abram and Sarai, out of here.
But here's the kicker. Abram leaves Egypt richer than he came. Livestock, servants, all that jazz.
All thanks to his little lie.
It's like the universe works in mysterious, messed up ways,
It makes you wonder, right? About those moral gray areas.
It sure does. But that's the thing about this story. It's not some fairy tale. It's messy. Just like life.
And that's why it resonates, even after all these centuries.
Because Abram, he's the father of nations, chosen by God, but he's also human, capable of screwing up, making bad calls, just like the rest of us.
He was afraid. We get it. But he took a shortcut. And sometimes those shortcuts, they lead you down a thorny path.
And that, my friends, is what makes the story so fascinating. It's about faith, sure. It's about God's promise, but it's also about those human flaws that make us, well, human.
We all have them, those moments where we choose the easy way out, even if it compromises, well, everything.
Exactly. So what's the takeaway? What do we learn from Abram's little Egyptian escapade?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think it forces us to ask ourselves, what would we do if we were in Abram's sandals? Facing down a famine, the unknown, would we trust the promise?
Or would we, like Abram, take the gamble, hoping for the best, but risking it all in the process?
Tough call, right?
Tough call indeed. And that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the life of Abram. But that question, that's for you to ponder. What would you do? Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Toby, Eleanor, and our team of researchers are working hard to produce more episodes. If you value what we're doing here, please consider subscribing and sharing the word. Additionally, our podcast, RSS, and Patreon links can be found below. Listener support is what makes our work possible. Join us next time for another deep dive. God bless.